My name is Derek Dunsire. I'm the client lead for the Avenues programme within Glasgow. It's a very ambitious activity. We first dreamt this up in 2012, so this is actually year 7 for me, but it's only now that we're actually delivering on the first 600 metres off an avenue, Sauchiehall Street West, which is part of the Sauchiehall Street Avenue. So this is a quick rundown of the programme and the activities and some of the design background. Now, I tell you, it is 70 odd slides. I'm just going to race through them, and the slides are available for you. Okay, so a very quick slide. The Avenues project is City Deal funding. City Deal activity is a partnership here in Glasgow region between the UK and the Scottish governments. In essence, it has 1.1 million for infrastructure fund. The Avenues project has 115 million to spend on that. But there is a myriad. It's 20 major infrastructure projects, 15,000 jobs during construction, etc., etc. But fundamentally, it's all about economic activity. And one of my meetings, I've been in meetings since 10 o'clock this morning, one of the meetings was with Sustrans, and it's an interesting one because they themselves have described us as the aspirational sort of project for active travel. In reality, this is a regeneration project, but we deliver on active travel and we also deliver on climate adaptation for the core city centre based on a people's first placemaking principle. So going back to City Deal, we have the Avenues project, we have Carlton, Barras, City Centre, Canal North Gateway, and we have the Clyde Waterfront West End activity. That's all City Deal funding that's currently taking place. If we come back to the origins of this project activity, it actually stems back. These are the original drawings from a workshop in November 2012 that we held, and these formulated a workstream report that was never published, that then became one of the foundations of what is, sorry, this is a PDF, so you would have seen on the backdrop here the City Centre strategy document. So we actually work within the City Centre strategy 2014 to 29 document. That document and that activity looked at delivering 2 elements across the city centre. First of all, we came up with this concept of 9 districts. We're undertaking district regeneration frameworks for each of these districts. They feed into the local development framework, strategic development framework for the core city centre that then feeds into the local development plan. It's a very interesting aspect because it's the first time for us in Glasgow that we actually have a sort of operations infrastructure activity that's being coordinated but also working in parallel and in conjunction with the city centre strategy team, delivering on the placemaking, policies, strategic drivers that then feed into the local development plan. So we have this meshing of practical activity on the ground that's backed up with all the policies and strategies at a city, regional and national level, certainly for the Avenues programme. What that means, people-focused placemaking agenda, integrated with key strategies that I've just mentioned. We are fundamentally responding to investor requirements that pushed for an enhancement to the city centre. It's all about placemaking, it's all about improved public realm. By default, we're delivering on segregated cycle lanes, we're also delivering on green infrastructure, and we're currently delivering on smart city infrastructure. What I mean by that is that we have a thematic project, the Intelligent Street Lighting project, where we are next month delivering on the LED rollout for the core city centre. That's 3,500 luminaires in the core city centre, but the important aspect is that we're also delivering on a central management system, which by default is a secure wireless canopy. So that provides us with the secure comms network that allows us to plug and go with a myriad of sensors or do what we like. In essence, we have a network where you could in essence control all the street furniture, movement of traffic, etc. within the core city centre. We're not going to do that, that's a wee bit too far at the moment. So the first district regeneration framework, we had the opportunity to work with Gale Architects, and we did the Sauchiehall and Garnet Hill regeneration framework that led to the Sauchiehall Street Avenue, which you'll see on the ground. Also, interestingly, one of my favourites, it picked up the underline, which we now have approval to go ahead with, which you'll be hearing later on. That's a really neat project that's actually delivering, improving on the existing connection between Great Western Road and Cambridge Street. So very quickly, I'll just run you through Sauchiehall Street. That was the proposal. That is what we were faced with. People have forgotten that already, that image. And the key element here, and this is, I'm going back 3 years ago, is focus on the white line. The white line in the middle. Because what we suggested, the white line is here. And trust me, 2.5 years, 3 years, 4.5 metres of footway, 6.5 metres of carriageway, 3 metres of service verge with street trees, 3 metres of segregated cycle lane, 4.5 metres of footway. That's what we pushed for. Our game is all about space reallocation. Okay, so we're trying to win back the space of the streets with the hierarchy approach of people first, cyclist, public transport, then everybody else. So that's what we proposed. And there's another one, another street, CCA, and then that's what we've actually delivered. So we're not quite there. It maybe doesn't sing, doesn't ping as much as the visuals. And we're now in the process of doing a surface treatment to the cycleway, a buff colour, and then all the linings. So once it's in bloom, etc., we're pretty much there. The next couple of weeks, they're now delivering on some additional street lighting. They're delivering on the street furniture. So we're trying to, I'm comfortable that we've pretty much delivered on the visualisation. Apart from, some of you would have noticed that we skipped on the rain gardens. The rain gardens was a step too far. I had to accept for my wider colleagues in the Glasgow family that this is a journey that we're on. And this was the first avenue, this was the pilot avenue. So rain gardens was a step too far, but we did introduce, some of you when you look closer, there is something called drain joints. So we have actually made the KFNS flag permeable with the joining between the slabs. And the trees have 18 cubic metres of uncompacted soil below the ground. So the rooting zones on the trees actually start just short of the curb line, and they come roughly to about here within the cycleway, and they are now by default continuous trenching on each of the blocks where you see the trees. That is a major win for this city. That's not been seen anywhere else within this city, within that type of streetscape environment. You know, the trees in Merchant City are in small 2 cubic metres of soil. Even I forget on Sustran, on the precinct, when we did that investigation, it was tiny, tiny. No wonder the trees were suffocating. So these trees will live. They will live. They'll hit the 90-year peak age, and then they're good to go for another 200 years. I have no idea how the city will fare, but they'll live. Okay, so core objectives of the Avenues programme: improving connectivity, improving city image, improving city economy, supporting redevelopment, enhancing, protecting the environment. We are in essence the binding mechanism that pulls together all of the respective DRFs and their associated activities. It's quite important that we are fundamentally about city economy, we are fundamentally about redevelopment. You know, we are still, Buchanan Street is still second only to London West End in terms of retail spend profile, and yet we're facing about a 20% drop in spend profile over the next 10 years. So it's fundamentally important that we enhance the experience of the city centre so that we maintain the volumes of people coming to the city centre and then staying for restaurants, for pubs, for culture, etc. And ultimately spending more money. So, when we suddenly got the 115 million, and it wasn't as easy as I'm making it out, it was a 3-year process of going through, not rattling down from 80 odd projects down to about 20 that were then finally passed the post for funding. We actually did something slightly different. We stood back. We stood back and went, okay, what have we proposed? How are we going to deliver this? So we actually engaged Urban Movement, who once again looked quickly at the city centre environment, so public transport, they looked at cycling, they looked at buses, they looked at air quality, they looked at a whole myriad. This is the surface water management flooding map for the 30-year. We looked at retail activity. All of it was pulled together, and we cross-laid our original Avenues plan, as you can see, and then matched it with development activity and vacant and derelict land. And then we went through a couple of iterations. This is from 2014 with some key avenues under the city centre transport strategy. And finally today, apologies for this poor slide, but that's what we now have. So everything in blue, red and green are being delivered, and the extra purple, which we've got added on, and there's actually one missing here, is actually subject to now an external funding bid. A sneaky little bid to Sustrans for about 20 odd million. So I'll find out in June if we're successful for that. So, key actions. So remember that. Better streets for walking, cycling, attractive. Spaces to be in, stay in. And also, importantly, climate resilience. We are delivering on climate adaptation. So very quickly, running through on some design elements that come into play here. Healthy streets. We're fundamentally delivering on the Healthy Streets agenda. You may be aware of this. This stems from Lucy's work with TfL down in London. That's now becoming recognised across the wider UK to such an extent that this year, 9th and 10th of October, the Healthy Streets Conference is coming to Glasgow. But a key element for me on the Healthy Streets, this is identifying top causes of illness and early death, and what's interesting is that obesity, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, kidney disease and low physical activity actually equate to more than poor air quality and particulate matters within air quality. So following the Healthy Streets agenda and following on the delivery that we are doing so with the active travel element, we could actually hit many of these top spend profiles. So this relates back to work done about 8-9 years ago by NICE, who first identified that for every £1 spent on cycling infrastructure would actually save £37 to the NHS budgets. So we're really pushing that messaging. So we have running on the back of the avenues, we happen to have a £1 million NERC bid that's currently in process at the moment, and that will allow the Institute of Occupational Medicine and Glasgow Centre for Population Health to actually monitor us over 10 years to see if we're actually delivering what we're intending to deliver and what our core ethos is in terms of achieving that modal shift within the Glasgow context. So traffic-inducing traffic. This is so an issue in Glasgow, where you've got maybe 40% of all journeys made in Glasgow are for less than 2 kilometres. So cycling is an important element of the activity that we're doing. Buses, it's so important that all of our work crosses over with the public transport network. We're not going to be like Edinburgh. I doubt very much, I don't know, I doubt very much we're going to get a tram. So it's the surface bus fleet that we must work with and improve and connect with. Cycling, what works? This is a neat little report called SPICE that was published by the Scottish Government last year, and we focus on this because somewhere in here it talks about space reallocation. There has to be a willingness to reallocate road and parking space to cycling infrastructure. We take that further, cycling infrastructure, but also pedestrian first. So this is how, you know all of these slides about speed, geometry, etc. Existing situation, this is from Argyle Street, and this is what we're taking it to be, where we're narrowing it down. I have the go-ahead for the concept design for Argyle Street, which is shown on our website, glasgow.gov.uk/avenues, where we are demonstrating that we're designing across the board on the avenues for 15 miles per hour. Now legally you can only enforce 20 miles an hour, but we're taking our design speed as being 15 miles an hour. Case studies, so Ponton, 26,000 vehicles, you've seen all that, you've seen all the strip I'm sure. Walking is a key element of our activity, as I've mentioned. Street life. So design development, apologies I'm racing through this. Design development, case studies, study trips, pilot schemes, following design standards and guidance, following policy, adopted design strategies, specific issue research, investigation. All of that bump is the activities that we're doing. I am not a road engineer and I'm not a designer. My professional background is ecology, so I'm an ecologist as a professional, but I've had quite a number of years working in development activity. So for me, simply because of my own background, I rely totally on guidance and evidence. Every decision that we take within the Avenues programme is evidence-based. Okay? So I ask everybody to follow respective guidance and respective evidence. And it is actually out there, because The nuances in a lot of our discussion and debate that we have with our collective teams, even within the design teams, let alone our colleagues in the wider council service, it's all about the nuances of the interpretation of that guidance. Because the guidance is there to deliver what we are delivering within the avenues. Altrincham is a good one. 6.5 metre carriageway in Altrincham for about 18,000 vehicles a day. Now, I mention this, before I get back to that, is because the proposal for Argyle Street is that we're taking the complete length of Argyle Street from Junction 19 to Glasgow Cross, actually to Moir Street beyond Glasgow Cross. We're taking it down to 6.5 metres of carriageway. That's it, end of story. And like Altrincham, it'll have a central rib. So we're telling the driver, you have to slow down even further. Okay? So that concept design is now being taken forward for stage 3 and 4. A key element for me is inclusive, and we're designing for all. So we have had discussions and debate with various vulnerable user groups. We've set up an overarching steering group to undertake the quality impact assessments. So these are members of that team. So quickly, I've mentioned Argyle Street. That's what we're looking at doing. What does that look like? This isn't such a great visualization, they're being updated. But a key element of Argyle Street design is that we're introducing the rain gardens. This is the Buchanan Street, Argyle Street junction. And this is Dixon Street. I'm racing through because I'm being told I'm being kept to 15 minutes. It's important for me that we're designing for all street, for all climates, for all seasons. This is just a comparison of Glasgow with Copenhagen, which is an obvious comparison. We're very similar. Climate resilience is a key element. Argyle Street will have rain gardens. We're looking at permeability. SUDS ultimately is a key important aspect, and we're now looking at that with the tree pits as well. Yes, we will be using uncompacted soil methods, the green, blue, urban, deep root, etc. But we are also looking at Stockholm soil, structural soils, so it'll be a sort of hybrid between the two. So there was a query on structural soils, so we took the guys to Dublin to look at a 78-ton tram that runs to one side of these tree pits that are all used with a compacted soil approach. It's simply coming down to, for us, we design for the location, and there is an opportunity that on elements of the avenues we will have to use proprietary kit to create the routing zones, but on other spaces we'll be able to use our method of structured soils. This is Trongate, this is Glasgow Cross, this is what it currently is. This is what we're proposing. We're actually taking London Road completely out from roughly Albion Street all the way back to Moir Street and Carlton Barras. We're making everybody go onto the Trongate, which will then become two-way traffic. What does that mean? Well, it means that I can take this really scary space of currently Glasgow Cross and make it look like this. And it actually works. This has all gone through, I'm not just like drawing this up, you know, not just scribbling this back on a notepad. This has all been through the panoramics model, the transportation model, etc. This works. And that means that we can create a completely new radical environment, that we can give the tall booth the setting that it deserves instead of being a traffic island. And we can introduce greenery, rain gardens, street trees, etc. And we can introduce this completely new public space. So all exciting stuff. So very quickly, just to lead into the guys in the underline, this is a visualization for St George's Place. And we've even found a statue of St George's. St George. There is one in Glasgow. A gift from the Manchester Cooperative Society. It used to sit on their building, which burnt down in one of these infamous Glasgow fires. But the statue was saved, and it currently is forgotten somewhere in this melee here that is a sort of public space. For those of you that don't know this, this is the St George's subway. And the underline basically runs from St George's to Kirkcaldy's subway stations. But here we're looking at simplifying, we're looking at maximising for the pedestrian and cyclist movement. So this is quite a neat little activity, and this is now being taken forward by Laura and Kira at Benton Scott Simmons in association with Urban Movement and Civic Engineers. This is the proposal for as you enter Phoenix Road. Now, this isn't as wacky as it seems, right? This is the undercroft of the motorway, okay? Now, we're working with Glasgow School of Art, who have Stowe College, so I need a bit of land from them that they own, so we're going to buy that off them. And on the other side, they're talking about an art gallery. So they're talking about removing all the walls and the barriers and providing a space for their students to put art. No idea how that's going to work down there, but we're providing the opportunity, and all we're doing is we're shunting the junction further to the right so that we can create this straight line from Great Western Road that comes right through Phoenix Road, through the bit of land from GSA and on to New City Road, and then it hits Cowcaddens and Cambridge Street. So you can already walk this if you wish. But we're going to make it so that you do want to walk this. You know, this will be one of the key routes into the city if you're a pedestrian or cyclist. And then you'll jump up onto Cambridge Street. Now, I don't know how, but at the moment, if you're a cyclist, you're meant to be in the cycle lane in the middle of the road. I don't know if any of you have done that. I've sort of crossed over the road and I'm thinking, really? You know, is that where I'm meant to be, with traffic on both my left and right? So we're making it more appropriate and more, you know, back to what people would anticipate. You know, it's a two-way carriageway, rain garden, segregated cycle lane, enhanced public realm. You know, so it's very much the formula that we're taking forward in all of these avenues. Now, I've probably said enough, and apologies that I raced through. Thank you.